Imagine waking up tomorrow, and everything you were ever told about justice was a lie. That hard work is rewarded, that the rules are the same for everyone, that the system you live in ever intended to let you through. What if the American dream didn't simply fail, but was never meant for you in the first place? Built on bones, on dispossession, on the systematic contempt for human rights. This isn't just irony. This is the operating system. In the next few minutes, you're going to hear a story that isn't in any textbook, about a continent that was emptied by an invisible force 500 years ago, not by cannons, but by microbes. About men who poured freedom onto paper while their hands were busy putting people in chains. About a loophole in the Constitution, just 3 words long, that still devours every generation the system discards. And about a question you're going to ask yourself at the end of this video. And the answer will be more uncomfortable than anything you believed before. Stay with me, because if you want to understand why America is so fractured in 2026, you have to understand what it was built on, and more importantly, what it wasn't. Long before a European sail appeared on the horizon, North America was a continent teeming with civilizations, not empty land, not wilderness waiting to be discovered. Cahokia, a city on the Mississippi that, around 1250, had more residents than the London of its time. Over 20,000 people, 120 artificial mounds. Monk's Mound, an earthen pyramid with a larger footprint than the Great Pyramid of Giza, a trade network stretching from the Gulf of Mexico to the Great Lakes. They built a woodhenge, a timber calendar that tracked the solstice, and then, within a few generations, the city was abandoned. Why? We still don't know for sure. The Iroquois Confederacy, an alliance of 6 nations governed by a democratic constitution, the Great Law of Peace. Men and women held separate councils. Women chose the chiefs and could remove them from power. This system functioned for centuries before a single European woman had the right to vote. Benjamin Franklin and Thomas Jefferson studied the Iroquois Constitution. They borrowed concepts from it, and never once credited it for what it was: intellectual property stolen at the source. The Pueblo of the Southwest. Multi-story stone apartment complexes, some with over 600 rooms. Irrigation systems in the desert. Chaco Canyon, a ceremonial center aligned precisely with the cardinal directions. Built without draft animals, without wheels, without a written language. There wasn't one wild land. There were hundreds of nations, languages, systems of government. There was no single American dream, but there were American dreams, millions of them, and most of them were not white. Then came 1492, Columbus, and with him, an invisible force that depopulated the continent before the first settlers ever set foot on it. Disease, smallpox, measles, influenza, typhus, diphtheria. The indigenous population had no immune defense against the microbes of the Old World. 10,000 years of isolation had left them defenseless. Scientists call these virgin soil epidemics. Estimates suggest that within 150 years, up to 90% of the indigenous population died. 9 out of every 10 human beings. No war in recorded history has ever achieved a destruction rate like that. The conquest of the Americas was not primarily military, it was biological. Squanto, the man who taught the Pilgrims how to survive at Plymouth. He spoke English because years earlier he had been kidnapped by slave traders. When he finally made his way back home, he found his village empty. Every single person he had ever known was dead. The Pilgrims saw providence. They saw empty land that God had cleared for them. Squanto saw a graveyard. When the first English settlers arrived at Jamestown in 1607, they did not march through untouched wilderness. They marched through a mass grave without headstones. The land wasn't free, it was depopulated, and that is exactly what made it so easy to take. The doctrine of discovery, a papal decree from the 15th century, declared non-Christian land to be ownerless. The operating system had been installed. If you like this story, subscribe to Wonderworld Mega for more knowledge and history in this style. July 4th, 1776. The Founding Fathers sign the Declaration of Independence. Thomas Jefferson writes, "All men are created equal. They are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights." Jefferson writes this while personally enslaving over 600 people. He writes this in a room built by enslaved people. He writes this with an enslaved woman at his side, Sally Hemings. She was 14 when the sexual relationship began. She was the half-sister of his late wife. She bore him 6 children. He freed none of them while he was alive. This is not a contradiction. This is the blueprint. The American Revolution was led by slaveholders. George Washington, the first president, owned over 300 people at Mount Vernon. His teeth, the famous wooden teeth that were never made of wood, they were carved from ivory, from the teeth of his slaves, and from hippopotamus and walrus ivory. Washington drank Madeira daily, a heavy red wine. The porous ivory absorbed the stain, discolored, cracked, and over time came to look like weathered wood. The wood was never wood. The wood was the reflection of his own consumption, worn in the mouth of a man who preached freedom and owned human beings. Of the first 12 presidents of the United States, 8 were slaveholders. It wasn't until Ulysses S. Grant, the 18th president, that a man took the office who had never owned another human being, and the Constitution of 1787. It never once spoke the word slavery. It disguised it in bureaucratic language. The 3/5 compromise. Enslaved people counted as 3/5 of a person, not for any rights of their own, but to give the southern states more seats in Congress, more power. Without this compromise, the Union would never have come into existence. The United States was literally founded on the backs of enslaved people. This was not a bug in the system. This was the system. The South built its entire wealth on cotton, and cotton was built on blackbacks. By 1860, the American South produced 75% of the world's cotton. The total value of enslaved people exceeded the combined value of all factories, railroads, and banks in the United States. 4 million human beings were held as property, the single largest financial asset in the nation. After the international slave trade was banned in 1808, a new, even more brutal market emerged, the domestic slave trade. Over 1 million people were sold from the Upper South down into the Deep South. Marriages shattered, children torn from their mothers, sold down the river, an expression that still echoes through the English language today. America did not become wealthy despite slavery. It became wealthy because of slavery. The operating system was not a bug, it was the feature. But right here, in the middle of this injustice, lies the crucial question that will follow you all the way to the end. What happens when a system frees the slaves but never abolishes the prison? Keep listening, because what comes next surprises even most Americans. The Civil War is over. Over 600,000 dead. Slavery is abolished. The 13th Amendment to the Constitution proclaims freedom for all. But there is a sentence that almost no one reads. Neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as a punishment for crime whereof the party shall have been duly convicted, shall exist within the United States. Neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as punishment for a crime. 3 words, except as punishment for crime, a loophole as wide as a cell door. The South used it immediately. The Black Codes made it practically illegal for freed Black people to be unemployed. No fixed labor contract? Arrest. Insulting a white person? Arrest. Loitering? Arrest. Tens of thousands were arrested in the first years after emancipation for offenses that did not exist for white people. And then leased out to corporations. U.S. Steel needed coal. The Alabama mines needed workers. The Georgia brick factories needed hands. They called it convict leasing. Slavery with a new label. In the Pratt mines in Alabama, the annual death rate among convict laborers reached as high as 45%. Almost 1 in every 2 men died within a single year. Why? Because it was cheaper to replace a dead convict than to keep a living one safe enough to work. The state profited from every leased body. The companies profited from every shift worked. The dead were buried in unmarked graves. This was not just in the Deep South. This was American industrial policy. The operating system had received its first major patch. Then the 20th century. The GI Bill of 1944, the most generous social program in American history. The promise, a college education, low-cost mortgages, prosperity for returning soldiers. Of the 3.4 million veterans who took advantage of GI Bill benefits, 2 million were white. The rest? Banks denied black veterans the loans. Universities, especially in the South, would not admit them. Redlining. The Homeowners Loan Corporation drew residential security maps for 239 American cities. Green zones, safe for investment. Red zones, hazardous. The red zones were where black people lived. No financial institution issued mortgages there for over 30 years. While white families bought homes, built wealth, and handed their children down payments for houses of their own, black families remained trapped in rental apartments. No equity accumulation, no generational wealth, and when black communities managed to build something anyway? 1921, Tulsa, Oklahoma. The Greenwood District, known as Black Wall Street. A thriving black community with banks, hotels, movie theaters, 2 newspapers, 23 churches. On May 31st, a white mob marched into Greenwood. On June 1st, it burned. Over 300 dead, 10,000 homeless, 35 city blocks destroyed, bombed from private airplanes. The National Guard arrested the black residents, not the attackers. Not a single white person was ever charged. The operating system did not crash. It ran flawlessly. The American dream was created in these decades, but it was deliberately made accessible to only one group. The other group paid for it, with their labor, their exclusion, their silence. These are not historical anecdotes. These are the roots of what you are seeing on your screen right now. The numbers do not lie. The numbers are the operating system's log file. The median wealth of a white household in America is $284,310. For a black household, $44,100. A ratio of nearly 6 to 1. For a Hispanic and Latino household, $62,120. A white child is born into a financial cushion that was stuffed by generations before them. A black child inherits the debts of discrimination. The homeownership rate stands at 73.8% among non-Hispanic white Americans. Among black Americans, 45.9%. A home is the single most important vehicle for building wealth in America, and nearly 30 percentage points separate the two groups. This is not a coincidence. This is the mathematical result of 250 years of systematic exclusion, compressed into a single statistic. Social mobility. In Denmark, a child born into the lowest income bracket has an 11% chance of rising to the top. In the United States, 7.5%. The country that invented the American dream delivers less upward mobility than most industrialized nations. America, the land of limitless opportunity, has lower social mobility than France, Germany, Canada, Australia, Japan. The birth lottery decides, not effort, not merit, not the dream, the birth protocol. And then the final point, the one nobody talks about. The United States holds 5% of the world's population, but 25% of the world's prisoners, 2 million people behind bars, more than any other nation on the planet, in both absolute and relative terms. China has 4 times the population and fewer prisoners. Black Americans are incarcerated at 5.5 times the rate of white Americans for comparable offenses, not because they commit more crimes, but because the system filters them out. The war on drugs of the 1980s and 1990s was a war on black communities. Crack cocaine, harsher sentences. Powder cocaine, lighter sentences. Same substance, same effects, different skin color of the users. The 13th Amendment, with its 3 small words, lives on, except as punishment for crime. The cotton plantations are now called correctional facilities. In 37 states, prisoners work for pennies an hour or nothing at all. If they refuse, solitary confinement, extended sentences, loss of visitation rights. Companies like McDonald's, Walmart, and Victoria's Secret have profited from prison labor in recent decades. The operating system never stopped doing the math. The South lost the Civil War, but it never stopped filling the prisons. The cell is the new plantation. The sentence is the new bill of sale. The Declaration of Independence turns 250 this year. 2.5 centuries, 12 generations, born, raised, and buried under the same stars and the same promise. 47% of Americans today say the American dream no longer exists. Among 18 to 29-year-olds, it's 60%. The youngest generation, the one that should believe in this country the most, believes in it the least. And maybe they stopped believing because they are finally starting to understand. Maybe the dream was never what they were told. Maybe it was always a promise with conditions, with exceptions, with invisible walls as solid as granite, but as invisible as an algorithm quietly sorting its data. The operating system was installed 500 years ago. 250 years ago, it received its first major update. It has been patched, expanded, modernized. But the core code has never changed. It determines who rises and who gets filtered out, who gets the land and who works it, who owns property and who becomes property. The question is not whether the American dream still exists. The American dream was never a universal truth. It was a selective offer, an exclusive club with a membership list written before you were ever born. The question is, who was it ever really meant for? A continent has survived 500 years since the first ships arrived. A nation has survived 250 years since it declared its independence. But an idea that all people are created equal has never truly begun to breathe. Not here, not for everyone, not under this operating system. What has America learned from 250 years of independence? From 500 years since arrival? Maybe the answer is not enough yet.